Welcome back to RSBN. Bruce LeVell, you just had some time in Washington, D.C., sir. I believe it was for the Fostering the Future Act. And Melania Trump really focused on our dear First Lady, America's children, and how they can prosper in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, it was such a really great event yesterday. The president, of course, he had a speech after hers. The funny thing about it was once he took over, he goes, that's pretty good considering she speaks five languages. You
Yes.
know, you know. But yeah, the great energy in the room in terms of, I believe 90% of everyone in the room was from the foster care program or adopted. So it was
Wow.
a really dynamic energy in there. Not to mention the folks that were in there that uh, had should I say, the latest, greatest technology on technology as it relates to, implementing a scorecard for each child from nutrition, education, job placement, et cetera. And so this initiative obviously is to get behind and modernize it because it's well overdue, and a lot of redundancies and, a lot of cut some of the red tape and, bureaucracy and put it more in a technical field and bring it to the 2025th century, 21st century.
Right.
It was really good. Met some great people too.
Oh, it's
Very passionate.
fantastic. Well, how are these public-private partnerships making a difference right now? Because you've been in business a long time, especially in the Atlanta, Georgia area, but you've also known President Trump for a long time. And as he was exiting the executive order that the First Lady penned her name to as well, since her office worked so hard on this, you had a couple of quick moments to catch up with the president. Would you mind sharing what was perhaps discussed? And also, as businessmen, you've both made a big difference in public life.
Well, it's kind of deja vu for me in a way. Very, because originally when he announced in June 2015 down the escalators, I believe we were traveling to Georgia to do a rally in July of 15. And I remember specifically having a conversation about adoptions and foster care, et cetera. And we got on the abortion conversation, the pro-choice, the pro-life, et cetera. And of course, I was adopted. So I had a conversation. I said, we really need to like take a closer look at, putting the message on fostering children and adoptions. He's like, yeah. I said, for every time someone uses the term, you know, abortion or whatever, let's say foster care and adoption 10 times over. And so this is just the tip of the iceberg to come in terms of what's going to take place. So in terms of my interactions with him yesterday, first of all, he squeezed my hand really hard. So just for the viewers, he's got a tough grip. So I know all the fake news out there. He isn't well. His hand. I saw him up close. Everything. He's fine. And I tell you, for an 80-year-old gentleman, I tell you, it's pretty pretty strong. And it's always good to interact because we've all literally started the movement together. Me, brother Dan Scavino, a handful of other warriors that have been through the storm of knocking out 17 candidates back in 16, very good ones at that. Taking out the Clinton machine and going through the fake shutdowns and lockdowns and mail-in ballots and that fiasco. And here we are. And then, not to mention, trying to ruin his life financially as well as physically. So it was a pretty emotional connection. We're talking about children. We're talking about helping. I love the fact that I call this the great good news, and instead of the typical tariff, you know, uh, trade agreements that we talk about, as well as what's going on in Ukraine, Israel, the Middle East. So just to soften the blows and just like, okay, let's get back to this great work of philanthropy about these precious children. And that right there just, to me stole the day. And I could tell because he really loves children, obviously. you know. And so it was the best time. But I'm actually anxious to see what's coming in the future as it relates to pushing this stronger in the states as well as the conversations on adoption.
Yes, we look forward to that as well. And truly, at the end of the day, Bruce, for President Trump, for countless others in the movement like you, it's all about being a father. It's all about being a
Yep.
grandfather. It's all about serving your community. And it oddly reminds me of John Adams before he passed. He was such, or known to be, at times crass, but very committed to his principles, and said he would repent in heaven if the American people would turn from their foundational principles that they sacrificed their time, their treasure, their sacred honor towards, and for many of them, their blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And I think Mr. Adams, among our other founding fathers, perhaps smiling down in this golden era because of initiatives like this focused on truly making America great again. And I think that's the character and mark of a man, to really look towards that. It's how do they treat the most vulnerable and the voiceless in society. So my question for you, too, as we turn to 2026 and a focus on the midterms, is it the domestic affordability argument that Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has been mentioning, or is it President Trump's focused on international affairs, ending 8 wars, 9 potentially with Russia and Ukraine? But I think all this together, does it not affect domestic policy when you have these great tariffs that are bringing back billions into the economy?
Yeah, I'm not sure where she's going with that. She's in the district above me here in Fulton, but I can tell you, you have to remember, we're unraveling 4 years of devastation and destruction. We're only 9 months into the administration. Gas is in $2, high 270, 250, 230. We are waiting on our, as I say, our cash on return. I use that in business, the way the president does, on our tariff agreements that we put in place around the globe. And just basically, like, really going out there and making good, sound business decisions. One of the big business decisions is like, okay, we are the leaders of the free world. And we are going to, as he did, this is one thing that people need to understand too. When there's constant chaos around the globe, it does affect consumer confidence. It does affect the overall growth. It stunts the growth of the GDP, obviously, which, by the way, on your show in the next quarter, watch the GDP growth. Watch.
Mm.
So, I think people are very anxious and very impatient. I think in terms of millions and millions of people that flooded the border, God knows who's here, and the weaponization that they use in the Justice Department against innocent people, et cetera. I think we've come a long way in 9 months, and I wish people would just calm down and stop being so impatient. And that goes for Margie Taylor Greene and many others out there. It's like, can we at least get out the gate? And,
Yes, yes.
it's like I wouldn't expect to fix this stuff overnight, and he knows that too. So
And we're seeing that as well from the vice president, Mr. Vance, speaking on that over the course of a couple of interviews from last week, that
yeah,
look at what we inherited. I mean, this was an
yeah,
absolute disaster. And then Secretary Besson as well mentioning, as you have, Bruce, that in Q1, Q2, you could see the GDP just
yeah.
unleash and an economy that'll be stronger than ever.
Yeah, I actually had some good conversation with Scott. He's actually from Myrtle Beach. I share some business partners that actually know him in the private sector. Very studious, very ethical businessman. That's what we inherited in the Treasury. I'll speak for him on that because I have close friends that I've been doing business for 25, 30 years that know him, and they vouch for that. And that says a lot about a person. And I told him, look, I told him yesterday, I said, man, I appreciate you giving up everything, abstaining from your business and then literally giving it all up just to come serve. So I thanked him. Actually, that's what I was talking to him about yesterday about that. And he laughed. He says, well, what good is all the great knowledge and the blessings if you can't come out and come serve the nation to help the nation? That's what he said, quote. So I like that. So yeah, it was a great day, and I think to Margie Taylor and many others, just calm down. We still have, like I said, to put, as the vice president's been saying, like, look, when I say this is a mess, it's beyond mess of a mess, and so stay tuned. Watch the next quarter, watch the second quarter of next year. Once our money starts flowing back in, and we start getting, as I call it, getting our mojo, and getting our momentum, and just really overall getting peace around the globe. So all the world can just do business and can trade and just do business. So that's the ultimate goal.
Well, we have our popcorn ready, the seatbelts buckled. We are ready for 2026. And then comes on Wednesday this vote with the Epstein files and the documents that the House Speaker has now granted his blessing to will allow to happen. Is this something that the Democrats will again show their cards and make a massive mistake? From what we've seen with these emails, apparently they knew about all this dating back years ago, but they were very quiet under the Obama administration, under the Biden administration, and dating back to, as President Trump said in True Social, why don't you ask Bill Clinton about this?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Well, I remember it's like in 15 and 16, it was the Russian hoax. It was he's a racist. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they have to figure out a spin, which they shut down the government. So this is another exercise trying to demoralize and to delegitimize the presidency. But here's the thing: Congress can vote all they want. If it kicks back over there, I have a lot of lawyers in the family, so I know enough to be dangerous. Is that no judge is going to unravel grand jury investigations? They're not going to do that. I don't care, liberal, left, right. That is like violation bar 101.
Right.
So the dog and pony show, and that's why the speaker is just like, okay, here we go. But once it gets over to the judicial side and the judge's like, no, we're not going to turn over the records of all the investigations and all the conversations. And to President Trump's credit, a lot of innocent people get hurt.
Oh,
For
yes.
example, President Trump is the most photographed person that I know in my lifetime. I mean, I've photographed with people who end up going to prison. I'm like, I didn't know what they were. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, you
Right.
don't really know. You can go. I remember I was laughing at my wife one time. So we go to parties. We were a lot younger in our marriage, but we always say, up 10 o'clock, time to go home. And we'd hear about that party, like the next couple of days at 2 or 3 a.m. So,
Yes.
he said that. So to the defense of like, well, Bruce and Sharon were there. So there's a lot of people, innocent people that can get injured in terms of just like, you know, talking to Epstein or like, well, there's a photo of President Trump and Epstein. They're buddies. There's thousands of photos. There's photos of Kim Jong. So I guess in terms of that's where the president's going with that. The second thing is that all the victims that were victimized most that I know of that we know have come forward who filed complaints with the local DA's office. I don't know if there's anyone else out there that hadn't come forward. I'm sure there could be. So where you go from there, some of these people have been tried. The person that was behind this is dead. The person that was assisting that went to prison. And it's like, okay, what else? Any more victims coming forward? No. So, and real quick, just not to desensitize the heinous acts that happening to these young girls. It's totally appalling. But I think the dance and the pony show that the Democrats are trying to do does a disservice for the nation. And they, like many other common sense people, even Stephen Miller, many of these folks were saying, or Stephen Moore and all the rest were saying, gosh, you have 4 years now, so here we go again. So it's just unfortunate because all it does is resurrect more of these incidents that happened to these young girls that were trying to put it to rest. Now it's back up in the spotlight. Now it's brewing, and it's like, okay, here we go again. So that's the tragedy that I see, the unfortunate part of this whole deal.
And you had Catherine Clark talking about the Democrat whip wanting to create leverage in 43 days of a historic government shutdown. And to your point, Bruce, this face crime, as was written by George Orwell in 1984, that historic book, it was required reading for me back in high school. I hope that they're still doing that for students. But you had John Wayne Gacy, who took pictures with First Lady Rosalind Carter before, during, and after her first ladyship, and getting getting within feet of then President
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter. It's amazing to me. I implore people to go visit the Jimmy Carter Presidential Museum
Yeah.
in Atlanta, Georgia, because two things you'll find: a situation like that where innocent people will come into contact with the dastardly, the evil, by way
Yeah.
of photo. Also, they actually fought for election integrity and security, and did so much in his private life and post presidency. But it seems as if the Democrats not very interested in that transparency anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And to just like the Diddy parties, I have friends that went back in the early 2000s, but like Denzel said, because I know Denzel, he says, well, we all know to leave because the devil's coming at 10 o'clock.
Right. Right.
And it's so true. Get out of there before midnight. That's anywhere you go in life, It's
That's
like,
so true. I
oh,
remember
my,
my high school social studies teacher. He said, "If there's anything I can leave with all of you before you graduate, everywhere is bad between midnight and 6."
oh
So
yeah,
I'm like, that's just kind of a good thing to keep in the back of the mind, and that two
absolutely.
drink limit at a party, things like that, just common
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely.
Well, Mr. Bruce LeVell, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your visit to the White House recently. We hope to see you again very soon here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
All right. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time, sir.
All right, brother.